All right, so today we're going to be working on multiplying decimals. So to multiply decimals, you need to line up the end of the number. So it's not based on place value, and I call it an invisible wall. Multiply like normal, ignoring the decimal points. So we're going to ignore the decimal points at first and use them at the end. In the end, we're going to count the number of spots after the decimal points and in all the factors, so in all the ones that we're multiplying. And we're going to use the same number of spots in my final answer. Remember that if you do have integers, you need to follow multiple integer multiplication rules for decimals that contain positives and negatives. So for the sake of time, I'm only going to be doing example 1 and example 2. So first things I see, I negative 109 times 3.7. So I know that I have integers here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark those. So I have a negative and a positive. I know that in my integer rules, I have to have 2 negatives if there's 1 negative. So that means my answer would get the negative. So that's going to stay negative. What we need to do now is set it up to multiply. So I'm going to use a grid paper to show you what I mean. So our question for example number 1 is 109 times 3.7. So notice how I set this up. This tells me everything. I pretended like there's an invisible wall right here. And that's where I lined it up, not based on place value, or you're going to end up spending way more time multiplying with a bunch of zeros that you don't need. So we're going to multiply this just like it was 109 times 37. So 7 times 9 is 63. Put your 3, carry the 6. 7 times 0 is 0, plus 6 is 6, and 7 times 1 is 7. You're going to drop down, add a 0 in the ones place, and then 3 times 9 is 27. Carry the 2, put the 7. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 3 times 1 is 3. Now that I've done all that, I'm going to go ahead and add it all together, straight up and down. 3 plus 0 is 3. 6 plus 7 is 13. 7 plus 1 plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. I know that 109 times 3.7 will not give me anywhere near 4,033. So I need to pay attention to those decimal places. So what I meant was how far away this is. So this has 1 number behind the decimal. The first one has 0 numbers. So 0 plus 1 means that my final answer will have 1 number behind the decimal. So starting at that wall, you're going to move your decimal up 1 number. So my answer would have 403.3 as the number. And we're going to go back to our notes and write that behind our negative sign. So 403.3. 1 decimal number behind the decimal, 1 number behind the decimal. That's important to realize. So let's look at example number 2. We're going to handle our integer multiplication rules first. So I have negative 5.4 times 2.3. So negative 5, positive 2.3. I know that I have to have 2 negatives when I'm working with integers, so my answer will be the other negative. We're going to go ahead and set up our multiplication for this number. So I'm going to make my wall at the back, and I'm going to line it up. So 5.4 goes on top, and then 2.3 right below it. This one does happen to line up the decimals, but that is not what we normally go for. That is not our concern. Our concern is that wall that we made. So now we're going to go through, and we're going to start multiplying. So we're going to multiply the first one. 3 times 4 is 12, so put the 2, carry the 1. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16. We've used all the ones on top, so we're going to drop down, add a 0, and then start multiplying with the 2. 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 5 is 10. We're going to go ahead and add those together since we've multiplied everything. 2 plus 0 is 2. 8 plus 6 is 14. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 0 is 2, and 1 is just 1. So we need to go back up to our question because I know that 5.4 times 2.3 is not going to give me 1,242. That just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to count the number from my wall to my decimal point. From my wall to my decimal point. So this one has one number. This one has one number. So when I add those together, my final answer should have two numbers behind the decimal. So we're going to start at our wall in our answer. And we're going to go 1, 2. So I put my decimal there. So my number should be 12.42. We're going to go ahead and go back to the notes paper so you can see it. And we're going to add this behind our negative sign. So this should be 12.42. Again, if you look at the question, I have one number. That means that I should have two numbers behind my decimal point, which I do. Multiplying with decimals is just like multiplying larger numbers with multiple digits. Make sure that you always have your larger number on top and do not line up your decimal points. Save it to the end and count till later.